The stars hung in a frozen, distant silence as Captain Marcus Hale stepped onto the observation deck of the starship Elysium. After years of serving in the Galactic Coalition's toughest war zones, he had finally returned home, not to a house, or even a planet he recognized, but to an inheritance that would change the course of his life forever. It all began 3 years ago, on the battlefield of Zithra 9, a war-torn desert planet where Marcus and his squad were tasked with defending a convoy of alien civilians from a marauding faction of space raiders. That was when he met Lixa, a being unlike any he had ever encountered. Lixa was a tall, ethereal alien with glimmering, translucent skin and eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. Marcus had no idea why this alien had chosen to fight alongside him, but together they had saved countless lives that day. When the war finally ended, Marcus expected to return to the mundane routines of a veteran's life: military pensions, bureaucratic paperwork, and the occasional reunion with old comrades. But the universe had other plans. Lixa had vanished from the Coalition's radar, only leaving behind a transmission for Marcus. The message was simple: you fought not for glory, but for life itself. For that, you are owed more than gratitude. Seek the coordinates I leave, and claim your inheritance. Curiosity burned in Marcus's chest, and after months of tracking, he arrived at a remote asteroid, hidden in the shimmer of the Orpheus Belt. It was not a treasure vault, as he had half expected, but a sprawling, iridescent structure that pulsed with alien energy. And it was there that he met them. 2 dragons, not the myths of old Earth stories, but towering, majestic creatures with scales that glimmered like molten gold and sapphire, and eyes that radiated intelligence and warmth. The first, Solara, had a regal presence, her golden scales catching the light of the twin suns. The second, Navara, bore deep sapphire hues, a fierce glint in her eyes, and a mischievous grin that suggested she enjoyed bending the rules. Lixa's message had been cryptic, but one thing was clear: these were no ordinary dragons. They were Lixa's companions, and now they were Marcus's as well. "You're alive," Solara's voice rumbled in his mind, a melodic resonance that seemed to bypass sound entirely. Marcus realized these dragons communicated telepathically, their thoughts entwining with his. I am," he stammered, feeling both awe and disbelief. "I didn't expect any of this." Navara chuckled, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Few do, human. Lixa saw something in you, a resilience, a heart strong enough to endure chaos and yet gentle enough to cherish life. That is why we are here, and why this inheritance is yours." Marcus blinked, his military training struggling to reconcile with the surreal scene. Inheritance. Solara lowered her head gracefully. Lixa was more than a friend. He was a guardian of this sector. Upon his passing, he left everything: wealth, resources, and Us in your care, not as a responsibility, but as a bond of trust. You have fought for life, Marcus Hale. Now, life is offering you its rewards. The weight of the moment struck Marcus. He had survived countless battles, faced enemies that defied imagination. Yet nothing in his military career had prepared him for this. Wealth, yes, that could be counted and spent, but to sentient dragons choosing him as a partner, that defied all logic and expectation. Days turned into weeks as Marcus adjusted to his new life. The palace, powered by Lixa's advanced technology, was a marvel. It could terraform its own environment, creating forests, rivers, and even simulated weather within its confines. Solara and Navara were patient teachers. guiding him through the complexities of dragon culture, alien technologies, and the delicate politics of interstellar wealth. But wealth and dragons were only part of the story. Marcus realized that the universe was testing more than his adaptability, was testing his humanity. He learned that his dragons, despite their might, were vulnerable to loneliness, desire, and the need for trust. And in turn, Marcus discovered his own capacity for empathy, courage, and love in ways that battlefields never demanded. One evening, under the twin moons that cast silver light across the palace spires, Marcus sat with Solara and Navarra in the observation hall. "I've never had this," he admitted quietly. "Not money, not power. I've always fought to survive, to protect others. But this is something else entirely." Solara's eyes softened. "It is not something you need to conquer, Marcus. It is something you need to live. With us, you will find joy, challenge, and partnership." Lixa chose wisely, and so did the universe. Navarra leaned against him, her warmth seeping into his armored heart. "And don't worry," she said with a teasing glint. "We won't let the galaxy forget that a human veteran now has 2 dragons at his side." As time passed, Marcus became more than a caretaker. He became a leader in his own right, using his inherited wealth to aid war-torn colonies, fund exploration, and broker peace treaties. The dragons, with their wisdom and power, were formidable allies. The galaxy began to take notice. A human, once merely a soldier, now wielded influence that rivaled ancient alien houses. Yet, for all the power and wealth, Marcus remained grounded. He often reflected on the battlefield of Zitharan 9, remembering the faces of those who had not survived, and the friend who had entrusted everything to him. It reminded him that no inheritance, no matter how vast, could compare to the bonds forged in moments of true courage and sacrifice. One day, as Marcus and his dragons watched a nebula bloom in radiant colors across the cosmos, he spoke softly, more to himself than to them. "I never asked for this life. And yet, I am grateful. Not for the wealth, not for the dragons, but for the chance to prove that a human can rise, not just to survive, but to thrive." Solara nudged him gently, her golden scales shimmering in the nebula's light. "You have always risen, Marcus Hale. It was never about survival. It was about the spirit that drives you." The universe recognized it, and so did Lixa. "That is why you inherited more than wealth. You inherited a future." Navarra's laughter echoed around the observation deck, bright and playful. "And remember," she said, "we're a part of that future too. You didn't just inherit dragons, you inherited family." Marcus smiled, a rare, unguarded expression. He had fought wars, survived enemies, and navigated the complexities of alien politics. But nothing had prepared him for the quiet, profound joy of realizing that in this vast galaxy he belonged not just to himself, but to a family that transcended species, worlds, and time itself. And in that moment, Captain Marcus Hale understood the true meaning of inheritance. Not the gold, the palaces, or the power, but the bonds, the trust and the love that could only be earned through courage, honor, and humanity. In a universe full of stars, he was a human who shone brighter than any constellation, guided by dragons, friendship, and the undying spirit that made humans exceptional.